Things are gonna get crazy!
Most everyone's mad here.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. So, how are we all doing, everybody? I hope you all had a very nice time since the last episode, or the last time we've seen each other. Oh, and on a side note, I did notice here we did get a new fish. Thank you so much, Edward. Now, back to what I was saying. Hopefully you all had a nice time. You all had a good weekend. And speaking of this weekend, I just want to go and give a special shout out to the great people out there who went and protested during No King's Day. And I'm not just talking about the millions of people who have protested in the thousands of, organized protests that has happened across all 50 states. But on top of that, there was also the people who went out there at a No Kings protest all around the world. Basically, the majority of people openly expressing that they are against tyranny, that they are against kings, monarchy, dictatorship, and all that kind of evil nonsense. I think it is very clear that we do not need any of them in our time right now, especially what we do not need and what we need to go and fight against as human beings in general, regardless of politics, religion, or whatever, that we must all fight against fascism. We must all fight against authoritarianism, and we must all fight against white Christian nationalism, which is nothing more but a fancy little word for Nazism. So, with all that said, even if you didn't go out of your way to an actual No Kings protest, even if you would make your voice heard or even make something as small as a post on social media expressing your support to the No Kings protest, then you are also doing your part as well. So just want to go and make a quick shout out and just want to also say thank you, because honestly, this really does lift up the spirits during this time when we do see like tyranny ruling over, especially in the United States. It's one of those things that does give me hope that the people will go and destroy fascism. And one day, that garbage thing that they call traditional values or conservative values will be permanently replaced with progressivism. But with all that said, though, this ain't about the No Kings protest. This is about AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, and we got a heck of an episode for you today with a whole bunch of animation news we are about to get into. And maybe there are going to be a few of them that will be a bit sad, but hey, whatever. It's going to be a heck of an emotional roller coaster here on this episode. So with that said, now it is time that I shall pass this on to the chat wall, and I want to go and ask you all, are you ready for today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast? All right, so let me hear you, folks. Are you ready? Let's see now. Are people actually ready? Yes, I do see people are prepared. Okay, now we're getting it. Okay, now I see the momentum. Now people are prepared. People are saying that they're ready. All right, so I think now, with all that said, it is now time that we shall go and get things started. And with our first story that I have for you today, now, believe it or not, I know that in the past few weeks or in the past episodes, there's been a bunch of trailers we would go and watch, but believe it or not, this time we don't have a trailer. But instead, we did get a little bit of an announcement. Well, maybe not an official announcement, but now we do know that there is one particular project that is now being worked on, at least again, because this is something that I will go and explain later, but we have heard for years that Warner Brothers has really wanted to go and work on this project, that they really want to go and bring this to life. And what I'm talking about, of course, is a live action film adaptation of the Jetsons. Yes, it has been reported that now Warner Brothers is taking the first steps in order to go and bring the classic Hanna-Barbera animated series, The Jetsons, onto a live action feature. Now, of course, this is not the first time that they are doing so, but this time around, they have a little bit of an idea of what they want to do, at least in terms of its key players that they want to bring on board. First and foremost, as you can see from the image right up here on my source here in Variety, you do see Jim Carrey here, and that is because right now Warner Brothers is currently talking to Jim Carrey in order to go and star in the feature, most likely to go and play as George Jetson. I don't think I can imagine that they would ask him to play as either Elroy or Astro. However, it's not just Jim Carrey that they're talking to for this project, because they are also discussing with Jurassic World's Colin Trevorrow in order to go and not just direct, but also write the film alongside Joe Epstein in order to go and work on the screenplay. Other than that, though, we don't have any extra information regarding this project. What we do know is that Warner Brothers is going to try again in order to make that Jetsons live action movie. Now, before we go and continue, maybe there is a likelihood that some of you listening or watching are not familiar with the Jetsons. And to give you a quick summary of what this is, let me go and read you from my source here on Variety, where it does have an explanation on what the show is. So let me just go and explain here. The story revolves around George and Jane Jetson, their children Judy and Elroy, and dog Astro. The family lives in the space-age styled Orbit City and enjoys innovations that were, excuse me, folks, that were considered wildly futuristic at the time, such as video chats, domestic robots, and even flying cars that are part of or about to be part of our daily lives 60 years later. So essentially, what Hanna-Barbera basically did with this is that they pretty much made the Flintstones, but in the future. I mean, that's literally what the whole concept is. Back in the early 1960s, one of the biggest shows on television was the Flintstones, especially with the fact that it was a series that was aimed for a general audience, not just for kids. And on top of that, it was like a major ongoing series where the popularity was just skyrocketing again and again and again, even though it was the honeymooners mixed with caveman. But still, that formula worked very well, and the Flintstones went on to go and become one of the biggest names made by Hanna-Barbera. But at that point, when the Flintstones were starting to get very successful, Hanna-Barbera were thinking to themselves, or at least with Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera, they were thinking, well, what if we take the Flintstones, we do that again, but in the future? And thus led to the creation of the Jetsons, which that went on to become very popular in itself. So much so that it had an initial run in the 1960s, but then they would go and renew like new episodes in the 1980s. So the popularity of the Jetsons like still kept on going for decades. And I know like it doesn't sound that great when I try to frame it as, oh, they basically made a Flintstones clone, but made it in the future. But you got to keep in mind that we are talking about Hanna-Barbera. This is something that they would do all the time, especially back in like even after the Jetsons. They would go and do that again and again and again with Scooby-Doo. Like you don't have to worry about Scooby-Doo ripoffs because Hanna-Barbera would be their own company that would manufacture Scooby-Doo ripoffs. No, but okay, but in all seriousness though, with the Jetsons, it was a series that it was very, it was very fascinating and a lot of fun. Like you get those family elements of the Flintstones, but then you got the extra futuristic aspect as well, where you see the technology that they would go and use. And funny enough, there's a lot of it where to this day is considered the standard. Like, as they mentioned, one thing that they would go and commonly do is have video calls, but you would see them in front of the camera. Like, there was a time when that was considered like really out of this world and futuristic. Nowadays, that's pretty much the norm with stuff like FaceTime. So from there are actually some elements in which the Jetsons were able to, funny enough, predict the future. Now, there are some things that maybe not all of it is like, we're not there yet. Like, you don't have like massive skyscrapers where like the first 100 floors are literally nothing. It's just the pole. And then like the actual houses are like in the stratosphere or like above that. And we don't have flying cars that turn into briefcases. But still, with the Jetsons, it's a fun little thing. You know, it's like its own thing, and it is enjoyable. Even as a kid, when I was in my entire Hanna-Barbera binge, like, I would occasionally watch Jetsons from time to time. But to go back into our main subject here with the fact that now they're going to go and make a Jetsons movie that may involve Colin Trevorrow and Jim Carrey, as I've insinuated a few times, this is far from the first time that that Warner Brothers wanted to go and make a film adaptation of the Jetsons, regardless if it's live action or if it is animated. In fact, this has been going on for quite some time. I remember back in the beginning of the 2010s when I made an animation look back of Hanna-Barbera. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've mentioned that Warner Brothers was trying to create a film adaptation of the Jetsons. And there's even one little part here on my source on Variety where they even mentioned that there were several attempts, where it says here, among the unfulfilled attempts to bring the Jetsons to screen were a 2003 version by Adam Shankman, a 2003 version, yes, a 2007 CGI version directed by Robert Rodriguez, and a 2017 animated version, in which the latter, that was supposed to be something that was directed by Conrad Vernon, I believe, and they already had a script prepared that was written by Matt Lieberman. So, as you could tell, there have been several tries and several attempts. Maybe bring the Jetsons into the modern world with CG, or try to make some kind of live action adaptation. They've tried again and again, but it hasn't really worked. And honestly, it does make a lot of sense that back in the 2000s, they would try to go and do so, especially when that was the time when, it was back in the day when cartoons that were turned into live action movies were very common, but instead of Disney movies, they would go and take animated shows that were nostalgic at the time. You know, stuff like with the Flintstones or Inspector Gadget, or even like Yogi Bear, the Smurfs, Alvin and the Chipmunks, and all that stuff. Like, it would have been something that like the Jetsons would have been a part of, but there was always that difficulty. And looking back into it, I would go and say that I do understand the challenge that would come with it. And this is like the biggest problem when it comes to trying to make a movie or trying to make a new adaptation of the Jetsons is what is often, like, as a Disney adult, this is something that we often call the Tomorrowland problem. Because the biggest problem when you want to make something that represents the tomorrow, the problem is tomorrow does come. And when tomorrow comes, then your idea of what the future is, well, it's going to be outdated. It's not going to be like what you would go and highly present, because it would represent a future that doesn't necessarily exist. Now, there are ways where you could go and turn that around, and you can make this fictional future where that can actually work in itself. In fact, at Disneyland Paris, they managed to work around that, where they decided to make their Tomorrowland, make it like a Jules Verne style vision, where it's basically the kind of tomorrow that people from the 19th century would go and expect. But if you would go and try to make a new Jetsons movie nowadays, how would you try to represent the future? Because again, there's a bunch of stuff that in the original animated series, now that has turned into reality. It's not like you could go and adapt the same things. Like, you can't go and adapt the same kind of technology that the series has in nowadays, because that's just going to be the same thing. Nobody's going to be really that impressed if you would go and do like those video calls that they would do back then. You would have to go and think of different ideas of what the future would go and be without making it immediately look like it's going to be outdated in like 10 to 20 years time. So there is that element of timelessness that you have to try to go and figure out when it comes to adapting a Jetsons movie, that it's going to be hard to really go and capture. Because, like, again, if people are going to go and watch it and they'll see the kind of future that the Jetsons are, they'll know that they won't be that impressed by it. So that's why it's always like this massive hurdle to go and adapt it. But do they have what it takes now? Well, I will say that even though nothing is 100% confirmed, not even this Jetsons project, we don't know if it will actually see the light of day. But I will say, for me, I feel kind of mixed with the people that they are considering to get involved. Because on one hand, having Jim Carrey come in to possibly play as George Jetson, honestly, that I would be cool with. I mean, Jim Carrey is already a great actor, and considering we are starting to see more and more of his comeback, especially thanks to his performance as Dr. Robotnik in the Sonic the Hedgehog movies, that I would be on board. That I'm honestly open to the idea that maybe we could have Jim Carrey coming in playing as George. Not to mention that nowadays, he does have a bit of that George Jetson look into him. So, like, I'm sure he could give out a good performance. But on top of that, he does kind of look the part. But then again, if we are going to be bringing in Colin Trevorrow to write and direct the movie, that I'm honestly not 100% sure. Not to go and completely bash the guy, I will say right now, I haven't seen everything that he has done, but considering that his big claim to fame is making the Jurassic World movies, that I'm not really that impressed with. I'll just say, in my opinion, I am not a fan of the Jurassic World films, including the original 2015 movie. I just find them to be Hollywood slop that's just soullessly cashing in on the nostalgia of the original Jurassic Park. So honestly, having him on board is just something that I don't really feel sure if he would be the guy to be qualified to go and make a project like this. But then again, I mean, Colin Trevorrow could probably prove me wrong, and maybe he'll go and create something that could just be absolutely amazing, or maybe even take something like the Jetsons and could actually turn out to be great. But so far, from what I've seen with what he has done with the Jurassic World films, I'm not all that impressed, so I don't know. That's the thing that's giving me a little bit of hesitancy. But who knows? I mean, again, this is all in the early stages, and considering that now Warner Brothers wants to try again to bring the Jetsons into a movie, this time with a live-action feature, we'll see if maybe something can go and work out. I mean, there's no such thing as a bad idea for a movie, and I can see there is a possibility that they could take the Jetsons and they could make a pretty fun-filled feature with that. So, well, honestly, this is at a point where we're going to say, we'll see. But first and foremost, I think, like, before we can ask, is this Jetsons movie going to be good? Let's go and first ask, is this Jetsons movie going to even happen in the first place? All right, so with that said, now I would like to pass this on to the chat wall, and I'd like to ask you all, what do you all think about a live-action Jetsons movie? Would you guys be on board with it? Are you a little bit hesitant about this idea? And especially, if you are a fan of the Jetsons, I would like to know your thoughts on it. In fact, let's go a little bit extra on this. I'm actually going to go and write down a poll, and I'm ready to go and ask you all about this. So let me just go and write down, would you want to watch a live action Jetsons movie? So I'm just going to go and write down yes, and then I'm going to write down no. All right, let's go and put up the poll, and let's see what the chat wall has to say. All right, so let's see. It's very fascinating that Warner Brothers is reviving the idea they got many years ago and tried to make that work. With how the future evolves so fast, it'll be a tough journey to make it feel timeless and meaningful. Plus, with Jim Carrey on board, I honestly think he'll make a great Mr. Spacely, given the over-the-top personality it presents. Don't know how it'll go out, but good luck, I guess. I just don't invite Grok in. Yeah, as I mentioned before, I don't think Jim Carrey is going to be playing any of the side characters, and I don't think he's going to be playing Mr. Spacely. I mean, I get it, and I could definitely see how he could bring that Dr. Robotnik over-the-top energy onto Mr. Spacely. It would work out, but considering that they're saying that Jim Carrey is going to be the lead, I think the intention is going to be George Jetson. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I'm sensing from the Variety article. So I just want to go and state that right there. But again, I do understand your thinking process with it, and I totally agree. He would be like, even if he wouldn't be George Jetson, he would make an awesome Mr. Spacely. All right, so let's see. I have heard of the Jetsons, basically the Flintstones, but set in the future, and how it became the inspiration for FaceTime and robot servants, still waiting for hover cars. I mean, hearing the word about a Jetsons movie, I was aware of the 1990 film with Tiffany, but I could imagine Jim Carrey being in the movie. I mean, it could be like the 1994 Flintstones movie, but set in the future. Oh God, I almost forgot about that 1990 film. That is true. Back in 1990, they did do a legit Jetsons movie, and I remember back then it sucked. It was awful. Was not a fan of it. And like, yeah, at the time they had pop singer Tiffany come in to go and be the voice of Judy Jetson, and she was awful. Yeah, so honestly, that thing was an absolute mess. So if anything, I would probably be on board with a new Jetsons movie just so we could go and wash off that bad taste from what happened in 1990. So yeah, honestly, that could be a good motivator for us to have like another Jetsons movie. Please give us something that can at the very least be better than what we got back in 1990. Okay, let's see what other comments we got. So, is this Eggman's good future or his bad future? All jokes aside, Jim Carrey would make a pretty funny George Jetson. He has the same kind of energy and wit where this loses me can be best described with two words. Colin Trevorrow. Both Jurassic World Dominion and The Book of Henry were terrible. So needless to say, my curiosity and optimism tanked right there. However, I'll still go in with an open mind as long as they don't recast Judy halfway through production again. Bad things happen. And by the way, just a quick side note, it looks like we got the results of the poll that I've made here, and it looks like the majority of you are definitely on board with this idea, in which 81% of you who have voted have said that yes, you would be down to go and watch a live-action Jetsons movie, where only 19% of you who have voted said no. So very interesting results. But to go back in your comments, I do actually see one great way of why you would have Jim Carrey play as George Jetson. Because if you are going to do so, then there is one thing that is mandatory that you must do if you're going to adapt the Jetsons into a movie. Regardless if it's animated or live action or whatever, you need to have the scene where you have George Jetson walking with Astro in that treadmill and then suddenly going fast, where George would be like spinning around in that thing, and then he would go and say, "Jane, help me stop this crazy thing. Not in that regards, like, to think about that in live action, if there has to be someone who has to play as George for that scene, it would have to be Jim Carrey. He would be perfect for that. All right, let's see now. What else do we have here? I'll go with this one. Most people have already said this, but this feels like an announcement that came in the 2000s. Jim Carrey as George Jetson sounds like a decent idea, but Colin Trevorrow directing and writing gives me a lot of dread. I thought the first Jurassic World was okay, but then he did The Book of Henry and Rise of Skywalker. Well, he was originally planned to do it, but then, well, that production right there was just an absolute mess. That's like a whole other story right there. But anyways, if it does happen, let's just hope that it's better than the 1990 movie, which is just the plot of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. Yeah, another reason why it just absolutely sucks. Let's see now. What other comments do we have to go and check out here? I think I read this one. And I think I only have time for one more, so I'll make this one count. I'll admit I've seen some episodes of The Jetsons when it was on Boomerang, and I did enjoy it. And I'm a little conflicted. I'm open to Jim Carrey in the movie, but with Colin Trevorrow, that I'm unsure of. Also, in terms of the look of the movie, I can honestly see them doing something similar to the recent Fantastic Four movie and give it a bit of that 1960s futuristic look. Oh, that is a great point, actually. Oh my God. And I mean, I did go and see Fantastic Four. That is true. That is actually a very solid modern example of how you can have that retroistic future, you know, where you could present that 1960s style future and try to make it look fresh, try to make it look new, and try to make it look fun. Yeah, I mean, that is true. If the Fantastic Four is able to do that, and honestly do that very well, then maybe they could also do that with the Jetsons. But like I said before, first and foremost, let's go and wait and see if that actually does happen, if we are getting another Jetsons movie. But so far, it looks like there is a lot of enthusiasm for that idea. Even if, well, the idea of having Colin Trevorrow working on it is like, still though, the idea of a Jetsons movie in general, or a new Jetsons movie, definitely go for it. Sounds like a good plan. All right, so we're going to go on to our first break. And when we do return, we are going to go into what I consider the main story of this episode. And we are going to be honoring a Hollywood legend. In fact, a Hollywood legend whose name is not usually mentioned before, but he reminds us about a secret art, or a very underrated art that goes into movie making. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back. Now, when it comes to our next story, we will be discussing about the passing of what I consider to be one of the most underrated Hollywood legends. Now, of course, recently you have heard that there's been a lot of passings recently, including Diane Keaton, D'Angelo, and just a quick side note, I mean, this is technically a passing, but not of a person, but of jobs, considering that unfortunately, it was recently revealed that Paramount and Skydance, because of their merger, they revealed they're going to be cutting down 2,000 jobs. So yes, unfortunately, considering that, yes, this is another major merger, then there are going to be many people who will unfortunately be laid off because of the big move. So it really does suck. And I do wish the people who did lose their jobs to have a better future soon, and that, you know, they could get back on their feet not long afterwards. But what I will be discussing here is actually in regards to someone who has made some of the most recognized iconography in cinema history. But sadly, it was just last week, or the week before I am recording this right now, that he is sadly gone. So with that said, let's go and discuss about the passing of Drew Struzan. Drew Struzan has been reported to have passed away at the age of 78. Now, it was actually recently revealed earlier this year that Struzan was actually in the late stage of Alzheimer's, and that has been very much affecting his life for quite some time. If you're familiar with Alzheimer's, if you knew someone who had Alzheimer's before they pass away, you would understand that it is no joke, and it really does feel like it it really does slow down the process of someone's death. It's not fun to see it secondhand to go and happen, or rather it be Alzheimer's or dementia. It's something that if you know someone who passed away from that and you knew their life just prior, before they would pass away, you'd understand that it's a sad sight to see someone slowly deteriorate. And that's unfortunately what has occurred with Drew Struzan. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with who Drew Struzan is, he is actually a movie poster artist. But not just that, he is possibly the most well-known movie poster artist of all time. I can guarantee you that if you have seen a movie before, or if you have any form of interest in movies, then you have most likely or have definitely seen something that was done by Drew Struzan. Especially that when it comes to what he does, he is actually someone who has collaborated with some of the biggest names in cinema history, where he would go and work with them in order to make posters for their movies. And he wouldn't just go and make a simple poster that everybody would know. Like, he would actually create art with it, where he would actually draw the pictures and really bring them to life. And this man is an extremely talented artist, so much so that he was able to go and collaborate with Steven Spielberg. In fact, that's probably his biggest Hollywood friend, because he has made a lot, and I do mean a lot, of posters for Steven Spielberg. He has also done posters for George Lucas, for Guillermo del Toro. He has also done a lot of posters for Jim Henson. So he has frequently collaborated on several different Muppet projects, and the list goes on. In fact, allow me to go and show you some of the posters that he has made. So I'm just going to go and quickly switch to my source here on Imp Awards. And this is an entire catalog of the movie posters that Drew Struzan has done. So let me just show you some examples. In fact, I'll show you examples of some of his most famous works. Like this one right here is the poster for the special edition of the original Star Wars that he has done. Then moving forward, here's another very famous one. He has also done Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So this is so you will see that he has collaborated on some of the biggest IPs in movie history also. I mean, that's kind of the benefit of working with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and a few others. So here we have Indiana Jones. And, you want to know another really famous one that he's done? Check out this one. Yes, this is the man behind the poster of Back to the Future, the one with the DeLorean, in which the tire tracks are on fire, and with Marty McFly coming out and just checking his watch. But since I have mentioned that, yes, he did work on several different Muppet projects, let me show you some examples. Here is the poster for the original Muppet movie with Kermit and Miss Piggy on top being romantic with each other, and then you got the whole gang in the car. And then moving forward, he also did The Great Muppet Caper as well. He did work on that poster. And I know this is one that is not only nostalgic, but also very iconic. He also did the poster for Muppet Christmas Carol with the Muppets that are on top of Ebenezer Scrooge, who's just walking in the middle of London. And you got the title on top that says The Muppet Christmas Carol. And another very impressive one that he did is He also did the poster for Muppet Treasure Island, where you see the Muppets that are in one corner with like all with the treasure and everybody dressing up as their roles. And then you see on the side with Tim Curry as John Silver and on the various different Muppets and the pig tribe. Like you got all that going on in this poster. But wait, there is more, because he has also done the poster for Sylvester Stallone's First Blood, where he would play as Rambo. He also did the iconic poster for The Thing with the guy, with the glowing head. And also he did the poster, of course, of Hook, considering that it is another project from Steven Spielberg. And then right over here, we also have the poster for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or the Philosopher's Stone, based on where you're from. So he also did that one. And and here's one that is a classic for me. He also did the poster for the 1980s cult classic Return to Oz. So he has done a few Disney projects as well. And yes, people, since we are AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, it is worth mentioning that he has also done some animated works as well. Here we see he did the poster for We're Back, A Dinosaur Story, considering that this one is also another Steven Spielberg associated film. And speaking of that, he also did the poster for An American Tail. He's done a few, but probably the most recognizable one is seeing the people walking off the boat, and then you got Fievel, who's like right in the middle. Like everything is presented in live action, and then you got this cartoon mouse that's happily walking down. I think there are a few other ones that's animated. Oh, actually, yes, there is, because he also did the poster for DuckTales the movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp. So that's another one that he has also worked on. But as you could see here, there are tons and tons of examples that Drew Struzan has done. In fact, like the work that he has made is not just limited to movie posters, because he's also done several other artworks for a variety of different projects. Like he even did one poster for Disneyland for the Indiana Jones Adventure Ride. And another Disney example, this is actually something that is very iconic. I'm sure you have seen it before, but Drew Struzan was also responsible not for the poster, but for the CD cover of Beauty and the Beast. The image with Belle and Beast, they're holding hands, looking at each other's eyes, and in front you see the rose in the bell, in the glass bell with the petals coming down. This is a very recognizable piece of iconography. Like if you remember back in the 1990s, this was one of those images that was pretty much everywhere and associated with Beauty and the Beast. So as you can imagine, with the works that Drew Struzan has done, like his legacy is just imprinted everywhere, not just with movie posters, but with art, with pop culture art as well. And I just want to go and read you a passage, like just to go from my source here on Slash Film, that has a great obituary about Drew Struzan. There's also a comment that is made by Steven Spielberg himself describing the works of Drew Struzan, in which he stated right over here, reading from my source on Slash Film, "You have so well memorialized our movies in this great still poster art we've all been blessed with over the years. From Star Wars to Indiana Jones, you have been so much a part of our films. You have been so much a part of how our films are represented to the world based on your snapshot and vision of what those movies have meant to you. And how, as an artist, you're able to transfer that brilliantly into amazing collective compositions with color and style. Your art is your art. Nobody has ever done anything before the way you do." Now, it's also worth noting, by the way, I mean, great words from Steven Spielberg, of course, but it is also worth noting that during the 2010s, he did slow down significantly, considering that it was the time when he officially retired, and the amount of times that he would go and like, build his craft and do his work, they were extremely rare. But even when he was at that retirement point, there were some rare instances, both just prior and even a little bit after, where he would still go and present his craft, and he would still go and provide like such beautiful art pieces with the kind of posters that he would go and create. Just going back to Imp Awards here, like some recent examples, he actually did do a poster for Star Wars The Force Awakens with where you see, of course, there's Han Solo in the bottom, but then you also got Rey and Finn and even Kylo Ren, but in his in his full Kylo Ren gear. But then also, this is another really nice one that I like. You also got this poster here that was actually for Floyd Norman, an animated life for Disney legend Floyd Norman. And it's a simple, like, it's just like a simple caricature that Drew Struzan has made. Well, not a caricature, but just like a drawn portrait of him. And it is very nice. On top of that, he has also done a poster for AMC's The Walking Dead, which is, you see a bunch of like zombies that are just staring in front of the camera, but it's like the detailed, gross looking zombies that you would expect from The Walking Dead. And back in 2019, actually, he didn't do not one, but a set of 3 posters to celebrate How to Train Your Dragon. Like, he made a short little comeback to go and honor all 3 movies right on time for the release of The Hidden World to go and complete the entire trilogy. Like you see right over here, you got even though it doesn't seem like they would be entirely complete or just used as official posters, but you see the work that he did for the first How to Train Your Dragon with Hiccup and Toothless behind him, and then you got his fellow peers of like upcoming upcoming dragon slayers in a way, including Astrid, and then on top you got the variety of dragons that show up. And then you got the second one over here, which honestly, like, I mean, the second How to Train Your Dragon is my favorite, of course, but even this poster is my favorite, where we got a family photo with Hiccup, his mom, and Stoic. And on top, you see Hiccup riding the skies with Toothless. And even at the bottom, it's just a little homage to Stoic's passing and giving him that Viking funeral. And then you got the third movie where you got Hiccup and Astrid together as a couple, and you see Toothless hanging out with the Light Fury. Like, this one is a little more simple, but this is to go and show you the work that Drew Struzan has made, even for animation and even like in his later years as well. And one thing I gotta say about Drew Struzan, and what I really admire about him, is that he reminds us about the artistry that goes into movie posters. And honestly, I understand why people would go and say that he is the greatest movie poster artist of all time, because there has yet to be anybody who could even be on his level. Like, it's next to impossible to hear about a person who would actually go and create a very unique poster for a movie. Like, nowadays, when you would go and see these very artistic posters, they would be for like re-releases of like popular movies that would come back to the big screen. Like, the last ones that I could think of that you would have that kind of special level of artistry would be from Tom Whalen, when he would be asked to do some artwork for movie posters for the re-releases of films like The Lion King, or recently with Toy Story. But other than that, though, movie posters are often like sought after as just nothing more but marketing pieces to say, hey, there's this movie that's out, or like, hey, like, look at the big representation of this movie. And that's pretty much it. Like, you wouldn't expect anything more that would come out of it. But with Drew Struzan, on the other hand, like, the meticulous artistry that he would put in his posters, like, you would see that, like, it is an art, that you would see the effort, the craftsmanship that would be put into it. In fact, I want to go and ask the chat wall right now. I want to ask you guys, when was the last time that you were amazed by a movie poster? Not by the movie itself, but just on the poster alone. Even if like you haven't seen the movie, but then you saw the poster and it's like, wow, that is a beautiful poster. Like, write down on the chat wall. I want to know, when was the last time you felt that way? And for me, I feel like it is extremely rare. Like, the last time that I can honestly think of would probably be Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Like, you know that image of Miles Morales hanging upside down, and then you see that sea of different Spider-Mans? Like, that was the last time that I was very much impressed by a poster. But other than that, though, nowadays, like, it's hard. It's hard to really imagine when a movie poster can legitimately captivate you, or especially captivate you by the craftsmanship that was put into it. It's unfortunately extremely rare that it would happen. And even saying that it's extremely rare is a generous thing to go and say. And just by looking at the chat wall, like, I do see like a few examples. Like, some are saying Avengers Endgame or The Wild Robot. There's also Wolf Walkers. And someone mentioned very recently with the Bad Guys 2. Some are saying Aladdin or The Little Mermaid, but can you specify if it's the original or if it's the live action remake? But yeah, but my point still stands, though, that with Drew Struzan, he reminds us that there can be an artistry that is put onto the movie posters, and that the work that he has done has resulted in some of the most iconic images that you can ever find in cinema. The work that he would go and do with his posters, like for Indiana Jones or The Thing or Back to the Future or any of those other features that he would go and create. They're not just marketing material. They're not just tools to go and present like, hey, come see this movie, but they really do define this awesome artistry, that like something that can actually help to go get you really excited for that feature. Like something that really says, wow, if they really put in a lot of artistry onto the poster, imagine the artistry that they would go and put onto the film itself. So that's why, and it's honestly something that I'm going to absolutely miss from Drew Struzan, is to remind us that movie posters can indeed be an art, and that the work that he has put in, it's going to be next to impossible to find someone who can actually be on that level or have that kind of craftsmanship that he could put onto a movie, onto an art piece, let alone onto a movie poster. So that's honestly one thing that I will absolutely miss. And by the way, just as a little bonus, if I would have to go and point out my personal favorite works from Drew Struzan, for me, of course, like with the Muppets, like they are iconic, like especially Muppet Christmas Carol is definitely going to be like one of my favorites for sure. Especially like this imagery alone is just so iconic. But some of my other favorites, if I would have to go and point out, I mean, I really do, like, as an animation fan, I really do love what he did with Floyd Norman. But if I do have to point out another one, that would be a good question. Let's see. It's something that I haven't fully thought about, but I will say the Shawshank Redemption one is also one that is very, very nice. And I mean, such a phenomenal film. So definitely represents the movie very well. Return to Oz is also another one I really like, and that is nice to go and capture the fantasy element and the magic that's in there. There's even another version that even represents like the darker version of that, like with like there's one that's like with Mombi, and you see like all the different heads that she has. So there is that. And I might as well go with a Star Wars one. You know what? The work that he did on Revenge of the Jedi, especially, that is beautiful. That looks iconic and really represents Star Wars right there. So yeah, overall though, I will say it's very unfortunate to see a legend like him pass away. Honestly, may Drew Struzan rest in peace, but may the legacy of his posters and his art will forever live on, especially to be noted as one of the greatest artists in cinema history. And it doesn't have to be associated with filmmaking. So with that said, now it is time I like to go and pass this on to the chat wall, and I'd like to ask you all any words you would like to express about Drew Struzan, and also feel free to go and express what is your favorite movie poster made by Drew Struzan or any of his works. Let me know what you think. Let's see. I actually own that Back to the Future poster by Drew Struzan. Yeah, this is pretty sad news to hear about his passing, and I know he's made dozens of iconic posters from the films by Spielberg to some of Disney's animated films. Yeah, when I think about his posters, I think it's Drew Struzan's style that makes those films as iconic as possible. He's definitely going to be missed. Film posters aren't really the same without him. You're telling me for sure. I'll say from one artist to another, he truly was a genius. His artwork really does have the sense of poise for what the movie is going to be about. And even if the film is not good, he frames it in a beautiful artistic way that sells me right into it. Rather it be from something like Star Wars, The Muppets, Don Bluth, DuckTales, and even the 90s Flintstones movie, all of them have a sense of beauty in themselves. What people try to imitate can never be duplicated. Rest in paints. Let's see now. You're very right to call Drew Struzan one of the greatest Hollywood legends that not many know about. I remember when I showed my mom some of the posters he did after telling her about his passing, she was so impressed that she asked me if he actually painted those himself. I don't know for sure if he did them all single-handedly, but if he did, he's a true legend in every sense of the word. What John Williams was to movie scores, he is to movie posters. Oh, absolutely. And I know you're not the only one saying that. It has often been mentioned that, like, I don't think there's any other name who is, like, as well recognized in terms of movie posters as Drew Struzan. And I will say, I don't think that he did all of his posters by himself, but I think a good chunk of them, it's just him who did it. Let's see, what else do we got here? Drew Struzan must be a pretty good poster artist, but it sucks we no longer have him around. I mean, look at these posters. They look really well done. And also, I never knew Drew did animated film posters, since most of us know him from his posters from live action films like Star Wars and The Muppets. But sadly, I will say, rest in peace to him. Let's see what else. This definitely is an unfortunate loss. Drew Struzan was an absolutely talented artist and created some of the most iconic movie posters of all time. If anything, I consider the work put onto movie posters probably the most underrated work done onto movies, where it's not just meant to promote the movie. So overall, may he rest in peace and may his legacy live forever. Also, one of my favorite posters he did was the Hocus Pocus poster. It's one of my favorite Halloween movies. Yeah, of course. How could I forget to go and mention? Yes, he also, like, considering that Halloween is right around the corner, he also did do the poster of Hocus Pocus. And I think this is one that he didn't do just by himself, but you could tell just by looking at it, and especially with the way that the Sanderson sisters were drawn. Yeah, it's definitely for sure that this is a Drew Struzan poster. Let's see. I'll go and read one more comment before we move on to the next story. Let's see. Who have I not read here? Just want to be sure. Oh, okay. I haven't read this one. It's really sad that we lost a legendary artist like Drew Struzan. He made very beautiful and very iconic movie posters. One of my favorite ones he did were for Back to the Future, An American Tail, and Beauty and the Beast. The Beauty and the Beast one is very iconic to me since it's been used so many times on posters, DVDs, and CD covers. May Drew rest in peace and may his work live on forever. Yeah, true words. So, honestly, this whole thing, I'll even say that this entire episode is dedicated to the works of Drew Struzan. And hopefully we will remember that there is art that is put onto movie posters. So with that said, we're going to go on to our next break. And when we do return, we're going to go and lighten up the mood as I got some additional theme park news. Not from Disney, though, but from Universal. So what do they have in store in the near future? Well, you're about to find out after this. All right, welcome back. Now, on our next story, we actually got some theme park news. Yes, there are some more to go and discuss. Now, you may remember in the last episode that I talked about a little bit of some updates in regards to what's going to be happening in Walt Disney World, especially with new animatronics and a significant update that people have been asking for so long for the popular Frozen Ever After attraction in Epcot. But this is not going to be about Disney. This is actually going to be about Universal. And Universal had a major year when it comes to their theme parks, especially with the grand opening of Epic Universe in Orlando, Florida. And a lot of the hype that was put onto there, well, they have been met, especially with attractions for the Super Nintendo World that's there. There's also the Dark Universe with Monsters Unleashed, and then you got the whole How to Train Your Dragon area, and even the additional Harry Potter place, which, yeah, I understand with Harry Potter, it's always controversial, but man, do they make some massive lines over there. But believe it or not, even after recently opening a new theme park, they got another resort that is just around the corner. Now, you might be surprised to hear that immediately that Universal is going to be opening one massive project, and then they're going to go and open another in a very short amount of time. Well, there is a little bit of a catch to this because let's just say that the scope of this upcoming resort, it's not as big as the other Universal Studios. So with that said, let's talk about the upcoming Universal Resort in Frisco, Texas. Now, this is going to be unlike any other Universal theme park or any other Universal resort. Mainly because, one, the scale of it is going to be significantly smaller, where this is going to be considered a more regional park. And, excuse me, folks. Oh, dear. And, two, this is going to be primarily aimed for children. And I'm talking about young children. In fact, this is actually going to be called the Universal Kids Resort, which I believe they said it's going to be officially opening in May of 2026. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that, but last I checked, I think it is specifically in May. I mean, even in this article, they say that it's for sure 2026, but it's just, I don't know if it really is going to be, I don't know if it's actually like in May. But going back to what I'm talking about, considering that this is just going to be for children, a lot of these worlds that they have here, or the themed areas and the rides and stuff like that, they will be based on family-friendly properties. And most of these are actually animated. And if we're going to go one by one onto what these areas are, the first one I will go and mention is the Isle of Curiosity. I believe that one is a more original one that is exclusive to Universal Kids Resort. But the main draw of that one is that this is going to be the place where you will go and actually meet Gabby from Gabby's Dollhouse. But in terms of the other places that they have, they are undeniably recognizable. First and foremost, just to go and read you from my source here on Deadline, the first one, other than Isle of Curiosity, one that we have here is DreamWorks Shrek's Swamp, where kids can meet Shrek and Fiona, features interactive play areas, and and these include Shrek's Swamp Romp and Stomp and Shrek Swamp's Splash and this is hard to say. Shrek Swamp Splash and Smash. It's almost like a tongue twister at that point. Shrek, swamp, splash, and smash. Try to say that 10 times fast. All right, but anyways, moving forward, outside of Shrek Swamp, we also got Puss in Boots Del Mar. Kids can meet the characters and play carnival games Barriles de Leche and El Gato's Meow. Then next up, you got Illumination's Minions vs. Minions Bello Bay Club. They could join the competition as yellow minions attempt to rein in their purple counterparts. Then after that, you also got Jurassic World Adventure Camp, in which it has a newly hatched dinosaur and a climb up the lookout towers. Then from there, you also got DreamWorks Trolls Fest is a big party at Trolls Kingdom with 2 interactive play areas, Poppy's Playland and Trolls Critters Crawl. And finally, this is one that is not from DreamWorks. In fact, this is not from Universal. It's actually SpongeBob SquarePants Bikini Bottom, in which there will be oceans of nautical nonsense as kids can explore Muscle Beach for some rest and Pineapple Paradise for some playful splashing around. It's also worth noting that I like to go and read out a quote here, specifically from the president of Universal Creative, Molly Murphy, in which she states here, Universal Kids Resort embodies the spirit of igniting thrill that drives everything we create, designing to bring our youngest guests and families together through play, creativity, and beloved characters and stories. It's a destination made for kids, and as a regional theme park, brings Universal's signature storytelling to families close to home. So that's pretty much the big thing with Universal Kids Resort, is that it is just exclusively going to be for kids with kid-friendly properties and kid-friendly rides. Like, I'm just going to go and say this right now. You will not be expecting any major attractions that are going to be there. Considering that this is a regional park, the scale of it is going to be significantly smaller, so you're not going to see any crazy roller coasters like the Hulk coaster, or you're not going to see any elaborate dark rides like either the Mario Kart ride or Monsters Unleashed. A lot of these are just going to be like the basic, simple attractions, like even like what is considered a basic level from Disneyland back in 1955. So there will probably be some rides that are like teacups, and I don't know, maybe you'll have a Ferris wheel, or you'll have like, just little simple rides that even the youngest of toddlers can go and enjoy. Like, this is primarily going to be for kids who are not, who are not really into attractions like the ones from Super Nintendo World would be considered a little too extreme. Like, if the limit that they can go is that little Yoshi ride that goes at 1 mile an hour, then that's pretty much the level that you would go and expect with the rides that they got here. In fact, I'll even say that most of these rides, they're not even rides. They're, like, a lot of them, like you'll see in different like concept arts and stuff like that, they're more like playgrounds than they are actual rides, where you would go and like get into this little jungle gym that is either themed to Shrek or that is themed to Jurassic World and stuff like that. But at the same time, this is also partly a water park. So there's also going to be a lot of areas that is themed to water, or the kind of rides that you better bring in a bathing suit if you want to have fun there. Like, of course, there's a splash area that's going to be for SpongeBob. They even said like that tongue twister that I mentioned with Shrek, considering that's a splash and smash, so of course water is going to be played. And even the Minions ride that they got going on with Minions versus Minions, that's actually going to be like a water raft ride, where you go into this water raft and you'll have like minions going crazy with their mischief, and they'll be splashing the people as they come by. So it is kind of partly a water park as much as it is a regular park. Not to mention that, of course, like one of the big things that you could do there is to have a meet and greet. If you want to go and meet Shrek, if you want to meet SpongeBob, if you want to meet Puss in Boots, or you want to meet Poppy, you want to meet Gabby, if you want to go and meet any of these characters, like this is the place where you can go and do so. And I'll just say, like, in my opinion, that, I'll admit that this is a pretty cute idea. This is not going to be something that I will go out of my way to go. I mean, considering the size that they are doing, I'm guessing that Universal is just going to be sticking to trying to see how business is going to be with a smaller scale theme park, because if this can work for Frisco, Texas, then I can imagine they'll try to go and like incorporate more in different areas where they don't have to be like massively big. They could just be like small scale, just like a bunch of small scale stuff that they'll put here and there for little kids to go and enjoy. Like if the Six Flags in Texas is a bit too much for you, then maybe you could go into Universal Kids Resorts where the speed is going to be a lot slower. But then again, this ain't going to be for like millennials. This ain't going to be for like adults and stuff like that to go and hang out. Keep in mind, this is called Universal Kids Resort, so it is going to be for them, especially. So in that regards, that's why, like, honestly, for me, I know this is not going to be for me. Like, as much as I would love to go into Epic Universe one day to go and check out those rides, like especially check out the Super Nintendo World, check out the How to Train Your Dragon area, and check out Monsters Unleashed, as much as I would love to go and do, I want to go, I would definitely be down to do that one day, maybe when America has a little bit more common sense, but that's a different story right there. I would definitely be down to do that, but Universal Kids Resorts, I think I can live without. I think it's safe to say that, I've passed the age of whom this could be considered the target audience. I mean, I literally just turned 33, so, I would just feel extremely out of place if I would find myself in freaking Universal Kids Resorts, especially when I don't even have a child of my own. So, I mean, like, what the fridge is the point if I would be there? No, but I will say, for real though, despite that, even though I recognize this ain't for me, it is a nice thing to see Universal doing. I do get it. And I mean, it is rare nowadays to even find a theme park that is aimed for little children, or it's like something that is just exclusively for them. I mean, at the most, many people could say that, well, technically you do have the Disney parks, like with Disneyland and with Walt Disney World, where a good chunk of the rides, it's just going to be, a lot of them are just for very young children. But then again, Disney does occasionally have some bigger rides as well. Like if you go into the Magic Kingdom, yes, small children will go and enjoy some of the rides that are more their speed, stuff like Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, for example, or even I was about to say the Snow White ride, but specifically the Snow White ride at Disneyland, because maybe it is debatable if the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train would be for like toddlers and stuff. But speaking of that one, like even though the Magic Kingdom does have like easygoing rides for little kids, there's also some bigger rides as well that adults can also have fun and really like get into the thrill of it, like with Tron Life Cycle Run or Space Mountain or Big Thunder Mountain, or even like some could even say like with Tiana's Bayou Adventure with that major drop. So there are a lot of examples that you could go and point out where even at the Disney parks, not everything is just for little children. But at the very least, Universal does provide something that it can be just for that, and especially for the people of Texas to go and actually experience around. So Like honestly, I don't know if like what would be the big goal that Universal wants to do with this. Maybe they want to go and just experiment to see if maybe they could plop in several different Universal Kids resorts in smaller areas so that they could have a piece of Universal, or that they could give something so that parents can also have fun with. Maybe they'll go with that. I don't know, but still, though, it is a very nice idea. And, it's cute. And I mean, if you want to provide something that could give children a lot of enjoyable experiences, if you want the kids to have fun, then honestly, I'm all in support. However, one thing that I do hope for is that, considering that this is going to be a smaller scale Universal resort, I am hoping that the price is also going to be significantly cheap as well. I know there are many people who complain about the price that's going on at the Disney parks, of how it is unbelievably expensive to go on a trip to either Disneyland or Walt Disney World. And honestly, I do not blame them. I totally agree of how it is insanely expensive to go to any Disney park nowadays. But in the case of Universal, however, they ain't innocent either. They're also stupidly expensive as well. Like, they are also guilty of jacking up their prices. And I really do hope that with what Universal is doing, especially with Universal Kids, I'm hoping that the price of admission to go in there, it's not going to be as insanely expensive as it would be to go into like Universal Orlando or Universal Hollywood, for example. And this is especially, like, I am thinking for the children here, that if they want to have fun, then let them have fun without having their parents worry about their finances. That I think even lower income children should have a moment where they could go into Universal Kids, and that they can also enjoy the rides that they got there and meeting their favorite characters like Shrek, the Minions, or what have you. That is honestly one thing that I am hoping for those families, that Universal does have the common sense where they will go and put their prices low, like for the price of admission, so that anybody, regardless of class, can go and have fun in there. All right, so with that said, now I would like to pass this on to the chat wall, and I want to ask you all, what do you all think about the Universal Kids Resort? I know maybe many of you who are listening and watching this are probably too old, but still, though, I would love to know what you think, especially if you are a theme park fan as well. I want to know your thoughts about this. All right, so what do we have here? This is definitely an interesting announcement. While this isn't as big or grand as the other Universal theme parks, I can see how this could be fun for younger kids. Probably the most interesting addition is SpongeBob SquarePants, since I didn't think Nickelodeon had an association with Universal since Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast, and the Nickelodeon studios that used to be in Orlando also were getting a Universal park in the UK too. Yes, that is true. I did hear about that, and I believe that's going to be happening in 2030 or 2031. But I know that the one in UK, that's going to be like a regular Universal Studios. That's going to be like that big scale thing that will have not just kid rides, but also like the big roller coasters and like the big e-ticket attractions that they would have right there. And I will say, though, that yes, it is true that it's been a while since we've seen that connection between Universal and Nickelodeon, but I'm not really that surprised, though, considering that if there's one thing they never let go of, it's SpongeBob. Like, if you would go to Universal nowadays, you'll see at least one thing that is associated with SpongeBob SquarePants. So I guess it's kind of like that one little thing that they've grabbed onto, and maybe from time to time, like in parades and stuff like that, you'll see suddenly SpongeBob making an appearance there. But I will say, though, that even though it's not the connection is not as prominent as it used to be, but it definitely is there. Let's see now. Gotta say, I'm not really impressed. I knew this would be foolish to experiment something on the same level of ambition as Epic Universe, but this seems like it's on the same level as Legoland or Six Flags. Yeah, I know it's for kids, but I don't even think kids would be interested in this. Still, it's Comcast's money to burn, so it's no skin off my back if it doesn't meet expectations. Best of luck with the parks and with the Texas power grid. Yeah, well, honestly, I would argue, like, I know it sounds stupid that I would be in the defense of freaking Comcast. Like, honestly, I would be the last person who would want to go and be a freaking Comcast shill. But if there's one defense that I would say to Universal in this case, honestly, like, that is kind of the point, though. It's not meant to be on an ambitious scale in the levels of either Epic Universe or their typical Universal Studios park. It is meant to be in the scale of something like a Six Flags or a Legoland. They did state that this is a regional park. This isn't like one of their big name Universal Studios out there. It's meant specifically for little children of Frisco, Texas. Like, the only people who really is going to be judging this is mainly going to be those small children between 2 and 6, maybe, and the parents, especially. They're going to be the big judges of all this. So, yeah, like, honestly, like, this is not the kind in which you would have to set your expectations. Like, if this thing is not as spectacular as Monsters Unleashed, then this is gonna suck. No, no, don't have that Twitter mentality there. Like, this is something that, like, it's meant to be a simple, like, a simple play area for children. So it's mostly for those Frisco people. Let's see what other comments that we have here. All right, so now we have a kid-friendly themed Universal theme park compared to Orlando and Hollywood. All we have here is a place for kids to run away with DreamWorks characters and the Minions, but then we have SpongeBob. I think at this point, kids are going to quote that one Texas line thanks to the fact that SpongeBob is going to be a part of the theme park. I mean, one of the characters is from Texas after all. Oh boy. Well, then again, though, I think this is going to be primarily for children who are still too young to even use the internet in the first place. They're still kind of too young to even quote anything. Like, this is meant for children who are like, this is primarily for children who are still too young to even understand what that 6-7 mean is. And on a side note, like, I would be amazed if I would find anyone who actually knows, like, the origins or the context or the implications of that 6-7 mean. Like, I've seen it a few times, but even to this day, like, it feels more like an enigma than it actually does a meme. I just wanted to bring it up because I was hanging out with family yesterday, and that was one of the subjects that we were talking about. It's like, oh yeah, it's like, oh, have you heard of 6-7? Yeah, I've heard of 6-7. What the fridge is 6-7? I don't know. It's like that kind of thing. Let's see. I don't know if we have a lot of comments, so I'll just read a couple more. Let's see. Well, I've never been to Universal Studios, and some of them do seem like fun, but in regards of being 25, I'd still be into it. I had fun in a children's museum, and I've always enjoyed water parks, and having IP characters would be a tip of the iceberg. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun. I always feel not too old for anything. Although, what they should do for a SpongeBob area is add a mini aquarium and small fish petting zone. I think that'll work well with them. I don't know. I understand the context of what you mean, and I mean, it would be very sweet to have like that little aquarium side, especially as an homage to Steven Hillenburg. But at the same time, I can't help but think about Finding Dory, and especially like with how aquariums are being handled there, especially like with the freaking, like, all I can think of is that fish petting area, like, especially with the, with all the fish that are like, run for your life! Like that kind of thing, honestly. So I don't know. It's just, I guess Finding Dory has ruined the image of a fish petting area. Okay. Let's see what other comments are there to go and read here if there's all right, I'll go with this one. I will say it looks like a fun and cute idea for a small regional, smaller scale park. While it may be less extreme and high speed compared to Hollywood and Florida, it's still pretty nice and sweet of giving kids and families something to do for fun. It's very cool that they're bringing SpongeBob to the mix since Nickelodeon has a pretty good relationship with Universal. Not too exciting, but hey, it's a cute idea. Actually, I just want to go and say right now that considering that now Universal is expanding to like little different areas and stuff like that, you know what I've been waiting for, honestly? And this is either for Universal or Disney. When is it that one of you is coming to Canada? I mean, seriously, like the only one that we have that is in terms of like the major parks out there is that we got a Six Flags. In fact, I think Montreal has the only Six Flags in Canada. I mean, we got some places that could be great for theme park purposes. I mean, for God's sakes, we got Marineland that's staying there, and that desperately needs to be changed. So whoever can come in, whether it be Disney or Universal, if you can come up to Canada and replace Marineland, we will forever thank you. I am just saying. All right, so with that said, we're going to go on to our next break. And when we do come back, we're not going to be talking about anything big. In fact, what I'll be talking about will even make Universal Kids Resorts look pretty big. But when we do return after this, we're going to go and talk about an upcoming animated short. All right, welcome back. Now, on our next story, we will be discussing what has happened in the Animation is Film Festival, which is basically LA's answer of saying, we want an Annecy Film Festival too. We got all the big studios here. Why don't we have our own Annecy? No, but for real though, and the Annecy, not the Annecy, but the Animation is Film Festival is a spectacular animation themed film festival in which they would go and highlight not just the big movies and the major projects that they have coming soon, but also celebrating smaller creators and the indie work that they would be making, whether it be with their own movies or with their own shorts. And yes, there have been plenty of panels there and special guests where they would go and discuss about many of the works that they have done, whether it be at Disney, Paramount, Sony, Warner Brothers, DreamWorks, Pixar, Illumination, and many, many more. But if there is one announcement that was made at Animation is Film that is noteworthy, then it would have to be this one, because among all the things that have occurred, the most talked about announcement that has been made is an animated short from Disney. Yes, it was revealed at the Annecy, I keep saying Annecy, at the Animation is Film Festival that Walt Disney Animation Studios has produced a brand new animated short by the name of Versa. And this is actually brought to us by a longtime Disney animator, Malcolm Pierce, in which it actually did also premiere at the Animation is Film Festival. And I'm just going to go and state this right now, because I know there have been a lot of people asking about when are they going to go and see it. And if they're wondering, is it going to be sometime soon? Is it actually going to be in theaters, or if it's going to be on Disney Plus? In that regards, I don't know. In fact, I don't think it was revealed where or when specifically they're going to be bringing this out. Now, one thing that has been confirmed is that no, this will not be released at the same time as Zootopia 2, considering it was confirmed that Zootopia 2 is not going to be getting an animated short beforehand. But when it comes to Versa, some people are predicting that maybe in 2026, okay, that is actually interesting. We do have some updates here. Well, number one, it turns out that my comment on Annecy Well, it's not. Well, or at least the slip up. It's not inaccurate considering that Animationist Film Festival is actually co-owned by Annecy. And according to the comment here, and this is from someone who did actually go to Animationist Film Festival, apparently the animated short is going to be coming out on Disney Plus next year. So it looks like it will not be in front of an animated movie. It's not going to be in the traditional sense. Okay, I understand now. So hopefully that will go and clear everything. So with Versa coming out in 2026 on Disney Plus. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, let's get back into Versa. So, what is this animated short about? Well, as I mentioned before, considering that this is from Disney animator Malcolm Pierce, this is actually a semi-autobiographical piece. And this is actually based on a very heartbreaking part of his life, considering that this was actually inspired by the time that he and his wife were about to have a baby, and unfortunately, the baby did not make it. So this is specifically an animated short that revolves around grief and revolves around loss. So just to go and read you here from my source on Variety, it even states that the story right here is during the making of Moana, Pierce and his wife Keely lost their infant son Cooper. In grieving their loss, Pierce was inspired to tell their story. Their son's baby shower theme, Sorry, I was tripping on my words there. Their son's baby shower theme revolved around stars, and his mother-in-law gifted the couple a crystal star, which was placed in a kitchen window. So, and it even has a little bit of a description about what this animated short is. So I'll also go and read you there, in which the animated short follows a young couple looking to start a family who experience a gamut of emotions, from grief and loss to ultimate joy, as they embark on an eternal, abstract, and imaginative cosmic dance of life. So from there, yes, I'll say now that this is going to be prominently themed to astrology and stars, but the big thing is about loss and grief, especially when you have parents who lost their child, especially at a massively young age, like in infancy even. And it's also worth noting that with Malcolm Pierce, he actually did get a lot of help from the people at Disney in order to go and make this. Not just then Chief Creative Officer at Disney Animation, Jennifer Lee. She was definitely a big help in order to actually make the short happen. But also, director Chris Buck was noted to be a big help. Yes, the same Chris Buck who directed the Frozen films and Wish. He also helped out, especially in terms of the theme of grief, where it says here, further inspiration came from Frozen 2 co-director Chris Buck, who suggested the book Permission to Mourn. A line in the book about how grief can split a person open resonated with Pierce. I had always wanted to have these characters transform into a newer version of themselves. I think a lot of times when we think about characters having this devastation in their life, there's an idea that you can heal from it. And when you heal, you're fixed. I feel like what I've learned is that grief, those steps, are a way for you to have a relationship with grief and to be able to keep those that you love so much closer. And I do think it is great that Chris Buck would go and really help out Pierce in this, not just because he's a great filmmaker, but also he is a father who sadly lost his kid. Now, he didn't lose his kid when the boy was an infant. He sadly lost him when he was either a teenager or lost adult. I remember they mentioned that in the documentary on the making of Frozen 2, but considering that he is a grieving father helping out another grieving father to work on this project, I think that would go and really work out very well in order to bring Pierce's vision to life. But outside, yeah, writer specifically, I do remember that. Considering that when they were making Frozen 2, Chris Buck wanted to do a tribute to his son and actually named one of the Atta Holland people as a writer, or at least one of the more prominent ones that the Arendelle sisters would go and talk to. But to go back to what I was talking about, yes, there is going to be that theme of grief and loss, but also, as you can see from the image, there is that theme of astrology and stars, where based on that baby shower that Pierce and his wife, I believe, and his wife, considering that they both had that theme of stars for the baby shower, they would make it the theme of the animated short as well. And that is something that also mentioned how, like, he really wanted to get into that theming and how to really make that look great onto animation, in which it was Jennifer Lee who actually went and proposed that Pierce would go and talk to another prominent animator at Disney, which is Paul Felix, where he knows everything about astrology, or has a very good interest in astrology, and he's an incredible artist, so he knows how to blend those two together. And it even says here, with that, Felix took Pierce's idea to the next level by presenting 7 paintings inspired by the slideshow that he made for the short. He brought so much amazing visuals to that early development cycle. So there is going to be that, so you will see like that imagery and the theme of stars, but there is also going to be another visual representation to go and present this theme of grief and loss and life and stuff like that. And this is going to be a very unexpected one, one that I don't think you guys would go and guess, and that is ice skating. Yes, we suddenly went from the loss of an infant son to stars, and now ice skating. And how the fridge does ice skating get into this? Well, I will go and tell you, actually. This is actually a form of interpretive dance that Pierce was very mesmerized and really wanted to really incorporate that onto his short, where it even says right over here, as Pierce was searching for inspiration, he thought about ice dancing and skating. While learning about the art form, he realized it was perfect for his story. That allows us to free up this idea of these characters potentially being able to be highly kinetic, but still emote in a very expressive way. Whereas when I was looking at dance, I found that if they stopped, they were stuck to the earth. And he even did a lot of major research and even brought on board choreographers Catherine Hill and Ben Agosto to go and help how to interpret ice skating into his animated short, where Pierce would go and even said, there is a shot where the dad skates around the mom and puts his head to listen to their baby in the belly and gets kicked. In the storyboard, we had the dad coming up and kneeling down, but Ben and Kat were like, what if dad skates around mom? So we were starting to uncover these really incredible nuances. So really, it looks like one of the major animation highlights that they want to go and bring up is the interpretive dance of it all. That really choreography is going to be a major part in this. And in order to go and express that grief and loss and the emotions that the characters are going to go through in this, like you'll have the abstract visual representation of the stars, but at the same time, you also got the interpretive dance from the characters themselves. And I gotta say that honestly, when I heard that this short was announced and that Disney Animation is going to be releasing a brand new animated short, even if it is something that's just going to be on Disney Plus or whatever, honestly, that got me very excited. And I feel like this is something that, it's kind of been missing from Disney Animation for quite some time. It's something that I personally kind of missed. And that is the fact that they would be releasing these new animated shorts, and not just like new fun little animated shorts to show before the movie, but especially for Disney to really go and just unapologetically experiment with what they can do with animation. I remember back a decade prior in the 2010s, like Disney was kind of like in their like little fixation where they really wanted to go all out and really play around with what they can do with animated shorts. And that would be the place where they could try to experiment brand new things with what they can do and even innovate some new techniques for their animation. Like we would see, for example, like Get a Horse, where they would blend classic 2D animation and then suddenly we would see them in 3D. And then there is also Paperman, like a prominent example and probably one of the most underrated things that Disney has done in recent years, where the way that they would make 3D look like 2D, like it's honestly admirable, the craftsmanship that they have done, and that it even predates what we would later see in films like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse or even the Peanuts movie. And then like you got plenty of the other ones like The Ballad of Nessie or Feast and stuff like that. But still, though, it was a moment where Disney can go and like not necessarily go all out just on their movies, but just really experiment on animated shorts to see like even more of what they could do with animation. Kind of like continuing a long time tradition that the studio has done even back like in the 1920s and 1930s, when they had the Silly Symphonies, when they were testing out what new techniques that they could do with animation so that they would later go and incorporate it onto their feature films such as Snow White and Pinocchio. And even like recently, like one of the best things that Disney Animation has done in this decade is their animated short, Once Upon a Studio, which is a beautiful tribute to the company's 100th anniversary. And honestly, I am still salty to this day that the Oscars did not nominate it for Best Animated Shorts, especially when compared to what actually got nominated. Most of them honestly sucked, man. You could have easily made some room for Once Upon a Studio. But still, though, going back to what I was talking about, it's great to see that Disney would go and actually return to actually making animated shorts. And I'm hoping that Versa is not going to be the only one, because especially nowadays, it's rare that you would even find these major studios making animated shorts in the first place. Like at the most, if they would go and do so, they would just be promotions for what they have coming up in the future. Like one of the most recent examples that we had is in front of Dogman, there was a short based on the Bad Guys that's just a promo for the Bad Guys 2. Or even like with the Smurfs, there was a little SpongeBob short that they had that really is just a random SpongeBob cartoon. And even though I gave a lot of praise to it recently with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Chrome Alone 2, with that one, like, yeah, it's cool and I'm definitely excited for it, but we know that it is kind of a promo for what's going to be coming up in a few years with Mutant Mayhem 2. So really, it's just like, even with animated shorts, a lot of it is just reserved for like IPs, and very rarely do we ever see these studios make animated shorts in order to go and experiment with their craft. And when they do so, not just with Disney, but also like with the other ones, like with Pixar, with DreamWorks, with Sony, they can make some incredible stuff. I still stand what I say I still stand by my opinion that if there is one thing that is better than the Spider-Verse films at Sony Pictures Animation, it would have to be the Hair Love short. I would honestly, I think it is possibly the best thing to ever come out of Sony Pictures Animation. It is a phenomenal short right there. But still, though, like, even though some people could go and argue that technically, when it comes to Disney, some could say that, well, Disney and Pixar have still been doing animated shorts in recent years, but the only problem is that they have been buried on Disney Plus. I mean, I'm not denying that these animated shorts were definitely amazing. They were definitely great with what they were doing with stuff like the Spark shorts. but they didn't have a major platform to go and really present it to audiences the same way they used to, like with like when they would go and release them on the big screen before one of their movies. The fact that it would be on Disney Plus, it would just be buried amongst like the thousands of other shows and movies that it would be in there. They don't really make it that easy to go and find. So I just wanted to go and point that out with what they would go and do with animated shorts nowadays. And I am hoping that with this one in particular, even though it looks like it will be coming out on Disney Plus, that it will be getting some attention and it will show more of, like really highlight more of Disney's craftsmanship. And again, I am hoping that in the future, we're still going to see more of Disney making these animated shorts, because like sometimes you never know if like the best things that they will create will come out of shorts. Like it can happen when the shorts themselves can turn out to be better than the movies that they would go and release. So yeah, I just wanted to go and express my thoughts. So honestly, even though it does sound like it is going to be a major tearjerker, I am excited to go and see what's going to be in store with Versa. To which, according to the one person in the chat wall who has been to Animation is Film Festival, that it will be coming out in 2026 on Disney Plus. All right, so with that said, now I would like to pass this on to the chat wall. And now I'd like to ask you all, what did you all think about the idea of Versa? Are you guys excited to go and check out? Do you have any additional questions? Are you guys a bit hesitant about this? Let me know what you all think. All right, so let's see. Okay, I'll go with this one, actually. It's cool that Disney is still making great short films, and the next one sounds like it will be an interesting but sad story. I am sorry to the director about his feelings, and it's great that he is sharing his story about the baby to everyone in an animated form. Also, I like people at Disney Animation or Pixar to tell stories about the culture of Muslims in their projects. I mean, it could happen. Just, all we have to do is just wait and see. Let's see what else we got here. Well, truthfully, I don't think it would be, I would handle a short with that hard of an emotional drive, but nonetheless, I know that it's going to be an amazing short. What I stated before was possibly my inner self talking, since I know what it's like to be in a grievous side, since I lost a lot of beloved ones myself. Also, Disney making more iconic shorts always feels exciting, and I know this is going to be great. And I hope they make more after this. Maybe in a series continuation of Disney Plus, if Star Wars can get 3, and I think that's it for the comment. I think he means with the Star Wars Visions, that maybe we'll have a Disney animation version of like Star Wars Visions. But anyways, let's see. First of all, I want to thank Amy Astley from Walt Disney Animation Studios for letting me interview Malcolm Pierce talking about Versa. He was very open about what happened and the amazing work that he has done for Versa. Not gonna lie, you guys, after watching it at Animation is Film Festival, I went to the bathroom for a few minutes and burst into tears. Then afterwards, I met with Chris Applehouse and Maggie Kang for another interview minutes after seeing Versa. My emotions were all over the place. My video for both Versa and K-Pop Demon Hunters is now out on my YouTube channel. Thank you for that plug in there. But at least it's great to know, hey, at least like we do have a confirmation that at least from this comment here, it is going to be something that will make you cry. All right, very nice. Let's see now. What else do we have? This definitely has so much potential. Versa seems like it has some interesting ideas, especially with its serious subject matter, and I can see how it could be another very experimental, and it's very nice to see Disney Animation back to making shorts after a while. I'm honestly still disappointed that Once Upon a Studio didn't get properly released in theaters, and it was absolutely snubbed at the Oscars. Oh yeah, you tell me, for sure. Let's see, are there any other comments to go and read here? All right, the fact that we're getting a brand new original sort, especially from Disney, that is not an IP, that got my attention. The idea about going through grief, the loss of a child, and ice skating sounds neat, yet very sad too. Let's hope it'll be out next year when it comes to Disney Plus. It'll definitely make me shed some tears. Definitely. All right, I think we got time. Well, we'll read one more comment because there hasn't been a whole lot, and then we're gonna go on to the grand finale. So, while it's cool to see Disney making a new short, I think this will be a major tearjerker, a story that mixes stars, babies, and somehow ice skating. But me saying that it's a tearjerker is not a bad thing. One thing that makes the movie good is that how it makes you feel, and I think it'll go great. Exactly. That's the thing. Like, a tearjerker is not necessarily a bad thing per se. It could actually be a very good thing. Actually, I mean, we've lived past, like, we are like those. Sorry, it's just I kept tripping on my words again. But the age of that toxic masculinity mindset of like, no, it's like, it's more man. It's like, it's more brave and manly for you to not cry. Like, that's pretty much done. Like, something that could go and actually make you sad, like, that could actually be a very good thing. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I absolutely love Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, because that ending, that I would consider to be an absolute tearjerker. It is so good, man. All right, but with that said, we are now going to go onto our final break, and when we return, we will get into the grand finale, where after talking about Universal and Disney and all that kind of stuff, we are going to be looking into one particular animation studio that had a major anniversary this year. So stay tuned, and we are going to check out the future of this beloved stop-motion studio. And now, everyone, it is time that we will go and end this episode off with the grand finale. And for this grand finale, we will be discussing about Laika, the beloved stop-motion studio that has brought us some fan-favorite films, including Coraline, Paranorman, Kubo and the Two Strings, and more. Now, one thing that I will say is that there is a part of its origins that does feel a bit controversial, considering that this actually started out as the Will Vinton Studios, where back in the 1980s and 1990s, one of the biggest names in animation was Will Vinton, where he made some very iconic commercials and even some special effects for movies that really did define not just American stop motion, but especially they were icons in commercials. But then over time, like moving on to the 1990s and the 2000s, well, things started to become a bit more difficult to maintain an animation studio, especially when animation became a lot more expensive, which was why Phil Knight, the co-founder of Nike, stepped in to go and provide funds and a little bit of a percentage of the company in order to keep it afloat. But then over time, the cycle kept on continuing that they weren't making enough money, then Phil Knight had to bail them out, and then he would gain more of a percentage. And that kept on going again and again, up to a point where he ended up getting major control over Will Vinton Studios. Now, there was a massive lawsuit that did occur where Will Vinton did go and sue Phil Knight and his son Travis Knight, but ultimately Vinton lost and the studio went to Phil Knight. Yet, oddly enough, based on what became with Laika, it's kind of this extremely rare occasion or a very, very rare moment where a billionaire would go and acquire an animation studio and it actually turned out to be pretty good. They managed to work out very well for themselves. And even with Travis Knight, I mean, he is undeniably a Nepo baby. He has proven to be extremely talented, especially with his animation skills with on movies such as Coraline. And then he would go and prove himself to be a very good director with Kubo and the Two Strings. And even in terms of running Laika, he ain't too shabby either. But this is not about the legacy of Laika. Even though this year, specifically back in June, it did turn 20 years old, The thing is, what I want to go and talk about here is actually in regards to the future of Laika. Yes, this article here from, again, Variety would go and discuss about 20 years of Laika, but it's not necessarily going to be about like movies such as Coraline and Paranorman or Box Trolls, Missing Link, and Kubo and stuff like that. What it would go and talk about is what they have in the future. And yes, it would be discussing about the next movie, Wildwood, which that's going to be coming out in 2026. And they did talk about the upcoming CG animated short, The Thrifting, which will be based on Paranorman. But what they've actually talked about here is something that's a lot more interesting. And that is specifically how Laika is expanding and how they want to go and do much more than just making stop motion animated films. In fact, let me go and read you specifically from my source here on Variety, in which it states right over here, things are changing at Laika as the studio has set its sights on expanding. It's ramping up development in both the animated and live action spaces. Its live action division was launched in 2023. Laika has also expanded into television, exhibition, and publishing, with one example being the exhibition Laika, The Magic Behind a Stop-Motion Dream Factory, which will be released in March. And they've dropped merchandise on their newly redesigned website. So from there, they also talked about one project that will be under Laika that is actually live action. Now, yes, over here they did state about Wildwood that's coming out next year, but then they talked about something called The Night Gardener, in which it says here, one project that is in development is The Night Gardener, which will be directed by Laika CEO Travis Knight. Described as a gritty neo-noir folktale, the film is set in rural Missouri and turns on a young man who struggles to keep his family together in the midst of a tragedy. When the news of the film was announced, Knight said, "The Night Gardener is a beautiful and timeless story that quickens the pulse as often as it breaks the heart." Ozark's Bill Dubuque is on board as screenwriter. Said Knight, he crafted a lyrical world layered with complex characters, provocative ideas, and keenly felt emotion. And it's not just going to be for Travis Knight to have his little filmmaking playground. There are also some other prominent names that have signed on to make some live-action Laika movies. Some of these include Lulu Wang, John Spates, and Phil Lord and Chris Miller. So, yes, we are about to get a Phil Lord and Chris Miller Laika movie. However, it's not going to be stop motion, so sorry, animation fans, don't put your excitement too high there. It's just going to be, it's going to be for something else. But anyways, back to what I was talking about here. Yes, Laika is planning to go and expand upon live action, but at the same time, in this article here, it would go and discuss a little bit about The Thrifting, which is going to be the Paranorman follow-up short that is going to be computer animated that's actually coming very soon, considering that Paranorman is going to be re-released in theaters this Halloween time. So I'm sure some animation fans are pretty excited for that. In fact, I'll even say right now, I'm actually considering myself to go and check it out. Hopefully, like, there will be a movie theater that will be close to me that can actually show it. But hey, I mean, if the opportunity is there, like, I'll definitely take it. But back to what I was talking about over here. Yes, it did talk a lot about Paranorman, The Thrifting, and discussing about like how it is to be working with CG instead of stop motion, especially with these characters. On top of also discussing about having having like the big name actors like Anna Kendrick reprising her role as Courtney, and then having Finn Wolfhard playing a new character in this. So they would go into that discussion. But then at the end of the article, it brought up something very interesting. considering that with the thrifting, it does technically count as a Paranorman follow-up, so it does raise the question, will we see more follow-ups from Laika in the future? And especially, are we going to see them as movies? Like, will there be a possibility if there's going to be a sequel feature to either Coraline, or maybe Kubo and the Two Strings, or maybe even Paranorman? Well, when it comes to that, the article says right over here that with the thrifting set within the Paranorman universe and Wildwood based on a trilogy of young adult books, the studio has not ruled out the possibility of sequels. And this is a quote here coming from producer Peter McCown, in which he says that, I think ultimately it's worth considering. I don't think we're ever going to say no to any piece of existing IP or anything like that. I think what we lean towards, though, is where's the original story? I did read Travis say he's typically averse to sequels because you want to focus on the most singular, important moment of a character's journey. And usually one film is what's going to do that. It doesn't mean that it's off the table. So basically, what McCown is saying here is that if we're ever going to see Laika actually make sequels, it's going to be maybe. But still, though, this is a very fascinating article. I highly recommend you go and read this, especially if you are interested in Laika and you love their films like Coraline, Kubo, and so much more. So if you're a fan of Laika, then this is definitely worth reading and worth checking out to learn about the future and what they have in store at the studio. But yeah, it's kind of fascinating to see how the two most prominent things that they have revealed here is how Laika is very well underway to go and actually work on some live action movies. So really expanding Laika to be more than an animation studio. And at the same time, you also got the possibility of them making sequels where they wouldn't go and rule out that. So it's like, even though, sure, maybe they didn't flat out say yes, that's not a no either. But still, the idea of Laika making live action, I just want to go and comment on that first. It is actually very interesting that now it feels like with Laika, it gives Travis Knight the possibility that he could become his own Walt Disney, that he could go and expand further than just working on cartoons and animation, and that he can actually go and, make live action movies, considering that he did get his first true taste of working on live action with the Bumblebee movie. And that actually turned out to be an underrated hit, where in the midst of all these Michael Bay Transformers movies, suddenly Bumblebee came in, and not just Transformers fans, but moviegoers were looking at that going, that was actually really good. That was better than most of the other Transformers experience that we've had. So from there, and this is not even to mention that with Travis Knight, he is also on board with working on more live action, considering that he and Paranorman director Chris Butler are going to be working on the He-Man movie for Amazon. But so from there with Travis Knight, of course, considering that now he has experience both in animation and live action, he wants that to also be reflected onto Laika, where they could go and expand upon making live action movies. And I think that's going to be very interesting to see because no, my explanation does not include coughing, but back to what I was saying. It is going to be very interesting to see what Laika is going to do in live action and to see how that's going to transcend onto, to see the filmmaking style that they would usually incorporate with stop motion, if they can go and translate that onto live action, to see if there is a true definitive filmmaking style that Laika could have. Because when you would go and watch something that would be from either A24, or you would see a movie from Annapurna Pictures, or any of those not necessarily a big name studio like Disney, Universal, Paramount, Warner Brothers, or what have you, but like on that, like recognizable smaller scale studios, like with A24 or Blumhouse or stuff like that, it would be interesting to see if there is like a distinct style that Laika can go and fully present. I mean, like we're already getting a bit familiar with what they can do, especially with stop motion, but can they also do that with live action? I guess it'll remain to be seen. I mean, we know that they do have Travis Knight, who is on board to go and work on that. But now with the inclusion of many of the other filmmakers as well, like they got Lulu Wang on board. They also got Phil Lord and Chris Miller on board. So maybe there could be an idea of how Laika can, what would be the way that Laika can approach movies that would make them stand out in the same way as I've already mentioned before with A24 and Blumhouse and stuff like that. So that's going to be an interesting factor. But then there is the possibility of a sequel. And I'm just going to go and say right now that if the day ever comes that Laika would go and create a sequel, like if they somehow announce that they're going to make either a Paranorman 2 or a Coraline 2, I'm going to be honest, I would not be surprised at all. Okay, honestly, now that I come to think about it, like, okay, maybe not a Coraline 2. Like, I know that is a major fan favorite movie right there, but considering that we are talking about a Neil Gaiman story, maybe like we could leave Coraline alone there. But back to what I was talking about. Honestly, I feel like I would not be surprised. Like, yes, there is, like, I am definitely open to that likelihood where maybe a Laika sequel is never going to happen. Like, maybe they'll be strict where they're just going to stick to original stories. But honestly, I feel like in this day and age, like, there is definitely that likelihood where Laika would, they would give in and they would go and actually make a follow-up to one of their big IPs, like maybe like a Kubo 2 or a Paranorman 2 and stuff like that. And the reason why I say this is because, well, we've been seeing more and more prominent animation studios where they're also making a heavy amount of sequels as well. And it's not necessarily their fault, but it's mainly because of the current landscape that we're in terms of cinema, where I wouldn't say the only, but the most dominant force in terms of movies is already existing IPs. Rather it be something that's based on something that's already famous, like the Super Mario Brothers movie, or you would see like big name sequels be released, like either Frozen 2 or Inside Out 2 or even Noja 2. Like, it's really something that it's basically stuff that already has an already established fan base, and then they would make a film adaptation, and that's when people would really go in. Those are the ones that nowadays would definitely get they would get like $1 billion at the box office and stuff like that. Yes, there are those extremely rare occasions in which there's a completely original movie that would get a lot of attention and would get massive audiences, as much as those already existing IP movies. We've seen that this year with films like Sinners and K-Pop Demon Hunters. But again, if you want your movie to be successful, then you would have to make an already, you got to make like either a sequel, a follow-up, or make something that's based on something that's very popular. And the case in point that I'm talking about is, look at Disney Animation and look at Aardman right now. There was a time that it was almost unheard of that these companies would go and actually make a follow-up, or even let alone a follow-up feature. Like with Disney Animation, like they would have like other companies to go and make sequels for them. Like, it's not Disney Animation themselves that would actually go and make a legitimate sequel. There was a time when the only follow-ups they have ever heard of before were the Three Caballeros, which some say is a follow-up to Saludos Amigos, The Rescuers Down Under, and the 2011 Winnie the Pooh movie. And that was it. And even with Aardman, the only time that they would go and do a follow-up would be the Wallace and Gromit shorts, and that's it. But nowadays, even those companies are making sequels because they're adapting to the times where now cinema is heavily IP based. With Disney nowadays, like they've been making like sequel after sequel. They've been making a decent amount, even though they're still committed to making original stuff like Strange World, Wish, and Hexed. They've made a whole bunch of follow-ups. Like they brought back characters like with Ralph Breaks the Internet, Frozen 2, Moana 2, and even later this year we got Zootopia 2. And even with Aardman, like nowadays, so far, those are the only movies that they've been making so far. I mean, we just got a sequel to Chicken Run. We got a second movie of Wallace and Gromit, and we're going to be getting a third movie of Shaun the Sheep. So in that regards, if Disney and Aardman would now be making sequels, I wouldn't be surprised if eventually we would see Aardman also coming in by making sequels as well. Maybe they'll go and do that with their stop motion films, or maybe that would be part of their plan if they have a very successful live action movie in the future. But still, though, it is very fascinating to see this expansion that Laika has now that they have turned 20, and now that they're going to be moving forward with what they want to do with movies, that now they want to go and expand. And keep in mind, this is just like what I'm talking about is just with feature films. Like I have yet to even discuss about what they want to do with stuff like with merchandising, with publishing, or even with exhibitions, or especially with television. Like imagine a TV show from Laika. That would definitely be interesting. So yeah, all this is to go and highlight that when it comes to the future of Laika, they got some pretty ambitious ideas, and some big ones, in fact, where you would see Laika really go out of their way to really experiment and try something new. And I mean like legit experiment with beyond the craftsmanship that they are familiar with. So it's going to be very interesting to see the reactions of animation fans. Oh, but speaking of which, though, I think it is time that we could go and ask these animation fans. So let's go and check out what the chat wall has to say about all this. What do you guys all think about Laika's future and their plans of expanding, especially with live action, and maybe go and create sequels? I would like to know what you all think on this. All right, so let's see here. I'm very much excited for what they're going to bring with our Wildwood, or to bring out with Wildwood when that film comes out next year. The film looks phenomenal. Happy 20th anniversary, Laika. Their films are top-notch and amazing. I'm hoping to see the re-release of Paranorman on the big screen, especially for the new short. I always imagine what would a Paranorman sequel be like, and hey, it could be possible if there's a good story to do so. And this is not even to mention, like, this is just a thought that just popped into my head. Considering that the new Paranorman short is entirely computer animated, there could be a chance that maybe in the future we could see computer animated Laika films. Who says that Laika just has to be stop motion? Maybe they could go and actually experiment with new mediums for them to go and try out. So maybe a CG, maybe a computer animated Laika movie is not out of the realms of possibilities. All right, let's see. Speaking of Laika and Animation is Film Festival, they also premiered the Thrifting short along with the 3D re-release of Paranorman. Anna Kendrick was there, and they showed the first look of Wildwood, and the crowd went wild in theaters. All I can say is that Laika's future is looking bright, and I just hope everybody checks out Wildwood next year. It does look extremely promising, and sorry for the shameless plug-in. Hey, that's on you, dude. I mean, you're the one who did the plug-in, so I mean, whatever reactions you'll get, that'll be on you. Anyways, let's see here. Laika has always been an impressive stop-motion animation studio, and I am definitely curious to see what their future plans are, especially with how Travis Knight has definitely proved himself as a director. As for the idea of Laika getting sequels, I could see the possibility of it happening. I would honestly be open to seeing a Kupo and the Two Strings sequel. I absolutely love that movie, and I could see it having a lot of potential, although I do still hope for more original ideas from them. Oh my god. I would actually be down for a Kubo and the Two Strings sequel. Like if they can make a follow-up that could be on the scale of that, oh man, that would be a sight to behold. Oh my god. Let's see what other comments are there. There isn't a lot of comments, so I'll just read one more and then I guess we could go and cap off from there. While I still don't like how the studio origins went, I'm still appreciative of Laika movies, especially with their stop motion works. I always loved almost every aspect of their films, and their way of expanding is also exciting. Except maybe the involvement of Phil and Chris. Should we be concerned? Well, considering that they say that Phil Lord and Chris Miller is going to be working on a live action movie, I don't think it's going to be that bad. Anyways, I hope they do make a follow-up. In fact, one thing they should do is Missing Link. I could see more as a more potential film series. Happy 20th anniversary. Yeah, I will say, like with Phil Lord and Chris Miller's involvement, I understand with their controversies, but in this case here, considering that they have signed on for live action movies, I think the animators are going to be spared for that one. But with that said, that should do it for today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. Thank you all so much for joining me on this fun-filled adventure. This definitely did come out as a great episode, and I want to thank you all for helping it, making it so awesome. And don't forget to tune in next time for more madness that could be in store on AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. What will that be? Well, even I don't know, and that is part of the madness. But I will say, though, if you all had fun with this episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, then don't forget to go and subscribe to the AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast YouTube channel and on the AniMat Live Twitch channel. But at the same time, if you guys are listening to this on any podcast service, rather it be on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and more, then don't forget to go and follow me on there as well. And with all that said, I would like to say thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, see you later, dudes.